Okay. Good afternoon. The new congressional districts, which were revealed yesterday, carve up and split apart communities all over the state. That's why we need more time for public input on the maps that we just saw. As you know, we've asked for more time for public input on the maps, but at this point it doesn't look like the House majority is going to honor that request. Instead, the House is going to barrel ahead with new congressional maps that split apart communities, carve up counties, mash together towns and cities that have absolutely no common interests. We had initially agreed to provide votes to support an emergency clause to move the primary date, but that agreement was contingent on giving the public ample time to provide feedback on the congressional maps. Republicans have refused this request now, making it impossible for our members to support moving the primary date. I hope that the House majority would reconsider their position that this be rammed through in 72 hours. But at this point, I'm not seeing any signs that that'll happen. All we're asking for is more time for public input on districts that break apart so many different communities all across the state in both Republican and Democratic districts. Evidently, this request for more time is not acceptable, and I really don't understand why there's such a rush. If we move the primary date, the maps wouldn't have to be finalized until months from now. Now, we're not asking for months, we're only asking for weeks, but a few more weeks to allow the public to have input on maps that will dictate the districts for a decade doesn't seem to be out of line, and yet we're being refused. Ohio will have to suffer the consequences of the GOP's rush to shove through these maps. By moving ahead so quickly, not only will communities not have an opportunity to discuss the impacts of the maps, but also there will be created a state of legal confusion as we've missed the 90-day window for maps to take effect before the filing deadline of December 7th, 2011, which is now 85 days away. Again, an emergency clause must be implemented to enact a new congressional map or change the congressional candidate filing deadline, which requires 66 votes. 7 Democratic votes are needed for an emergency clause, and the filing date must be moved at the same time as a potential primary date move, or we risk creating legal chaos. As I stated in my letter to Speaker Batchelder, we stand ready now and before to work together with Republicans to make sure that the public has a meaningful voice in this process and that congressional districts properly represent our communities and our constituents. Now, as a Democrat, I'm concerned about new congressional maps that create 12 solid Republican districts and only 4 Democratic districts. The political disposition of the state has been generally balanced between Republicans and Democrats over the years, and this new map does not at all reflect that balance. But as a citizen, I'm deeply concerned about how this map carves up and splits apart communities all across the state. This is a gerrymander that is far more egregious than we've seen in the past. Current districts divided counties 44 times, those districts that we have for the last decade. The new map splits counties 50% more, 68 times. Many counties are split 3 to 4 times, including Cuyahoga, Lucas, Summit, Stark, Franklin, Portage, and Trumbull counties. Cities and townships are split more than 130 times. On average, every district splits 9 different communities. When communities are split so egregiously, it weakens each community's representation, and it muffles the voices of average citizens. Let's take a look at just a few examples of how badly the new districts are carved up. District 15, Upper Arlington, the wealthiest school district in the state, is put into the same congressional district as Athens, the poorest school district in the state. This district has 23 community splits and snakes through central and southern Ohio from Union County to Franklin, Athens, and Highland counties. District 9, Toledo, is split 3 times, running from Toledo to Cuyahoga County. This long, narrow district is a precinct wide in some places and is connected by water only in other areas. There are 5 county splits and 10 city or township splits in that district. District 3, the new Franklin County district, includes 16 community splits. A major bank headquarters and the Statehouse are among the sections carved out of this new district to be put into a safe Republican district. District 7 includes parts of Stark County, including Canton, and runs all the way to Erie County. There are 7 county splits in that district, 13 city and township splits. Tuscaroras and Coshocton counties do not have the same interests or needs as Elyria. District 12 runs from Franklin County to Marion and Mansfield in Richland County. There are 3 county splits, 14 city and township splits. District 16 runs from Cleveland to Portage County and Canton in Stark County. There are 5 county splits and 16 city and township splits. And I could go on, but I'll spare you. To politicians, this map is important and it'll get a lot of attention. But people need to understand regular middle-class families will be deeply affected by this map. Carving up communities, as this map does, weakens people's voices in Washington. And that's not all. This map will create more partisanship and more dysfunction because it encourages candidates who pander to the extremes of their parties. Both parties, by the way. If the only competitive race that we'll see in the 12 new congressional districts is a Republican primary, then we'll see more extremists in Washington. And if the only competitive races we see in the 4 Democratic districts is a primary, we'll see more partisanship and less compromise in Washington. For those Ohioans who like the hyper-partisanship and political dysfunction in Washington and in Columbus, then you'll love this new congressional map. But for those Ohioans who are fed up, who don't like what they're seeing today, for those who want to end the political dysfunction, then let's look at the other maps that were submitted to the committee. Let's take a look at the League of Women Voters maps that have been submitted. Let's start with a fresh slate. Let's start with maps that provide competitive districts and drive candidates to the center rather than to the extremes, as this map does. Competitive districts that fairly represent communities of interest. It's those that elected officials will find will have to be more responsive and accountable to the citizens.